Hello, everyone. Welcome to VRIC Media, your most trusted voice in metals and mining. I'm your host, Darrell Thomas, and today we have the pleasure of interviewing Lynette Zang of Zang Enterprises. But before we get into today's interview, I want to remind you to click the link that is pinned in the comments below, as well as the description to the New Orleans Investment Conference. I will be there in person. We'd love to meet you in person. There's going to be some awesome guests there. Many of the guests that we interview on this channel, such as Rick Rule, Danielle DiMartino Booth, Lobo Tigre, many others. And so be sure to come to the New Orleans Investment Conference if you're able to make it in person. And if not, there's a virtual option where you can still access the exclusive information that is going to be shared at the conference. So hope to see you there. And now, without further ado, let's get to the interview. Hello, everyone. Welcome to VRIC Media, your most trusted voice in metals and mining. I'm your host, Darrell Thomas, and today we have the pleasure of interviewing Lynette Zang of Zang Enterprises. How you doing today, Lynette?
I'm doing great, Darrell. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, every time I watch a show, I just get this calming, objective reality after I finish watching your episodes. You really are able to communicate in a way that people understand, and that people understand that this is a long-term shift in the global monetary system, and not to get caught up in the short-term headlines and of the price of gold falling, and then you're getting the headlines coming out, the negative headlines and such. And so, I always appreciate that about you. Just wanted to say that.
Well, thank you so much. And I think, a lot of it is perception management, which is actually a program that is utilized by governments and central banks. And it's about nudging you in the direction that they want you to go in. And no offense intended, but you fell into it because you referred to the spot gold and silver contracts as gold and silver. And they are not. Yep. They are spot contracts, paper contracts, and what they do is represent a trading market, and they also represent the manipulations in the market. And it goes back to really understanding what it is that we're dealing with, which is physical sound money. And I guarantee you this stuff didn't, well, let's see, the date on this is 1889 and the date on this one is 1935. And they're still the same 1 ounce, $20 gold piece, except now it's in excess of $4,000 on the spot contract, not the fundamental value. Yep. And this is what I think $48 spot silver is at $48. And to your earlier point, those contracts had come down. Now, what has happened? Why would those contracts come down? And there are all sorts of reasons that you can see out there, and we can talk about anything that you want, but I'll tell you why I really think that you're seeing a pullback in the contracts is because we hit backwardation in both gold and silver, meaning that the current price to take delivery right now of the physical was higher than the futures contracts for gold and silver, because we're seeing this huge surge in demand. But whenever you get into anything physical, I don't care what it is, there is a finite amount of it. And so what we're actually experiencing, this didn't just start, it started last January, but what we're actually experiencing is a systemic shift in the way that physical gold and silver is being priced. Whereas it was being led by the paper markets, that backwardation scared the crap out of people that count on that paper market being the leader. But so you're going to see another reversal. There's not one itty bitty doubt in my mind about that, because we are entering a phase where it will be the physical that is driving the market. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. And yes, it's always hard. Even for me, I didn't sell any of my physical metals, but the stocks. I mean, when the stocks take a dive, and a lot of that tied to the paper markets and such, it can scare people off, right? But just thinking about the silver backwardation. So from my recent research, like industries and different nations, they want to take physical delivery, and they're willing to pay up for the spot price rather than the futures contracts and such. And so you mentioned that it also is happening with gold too. Could you elaborate more on that?
Well, it's the same thing. People don't trust those promises, and they shouldn't trust those promises, because in that contract market, they can create as much gold and silver that does not nor ever will exist as they want. But in those contracts, they also get to stand for delivery. And that started in January when we saw Europe, and particularly with gold, the Bank of England shipping over massive amounts of gold. But hold on a second. The Bank of England doesn't really have very much of their own gold. They do, however, hold a lot of gold for a lot of countries. So what gold was it that they shipped out? And when you look at whether it's the LBMA or the Bank of England in their metal stores, what they have available, they're much, much lower than they were. So if we continued with the backwardation and technically the price was stretched too far anyway, so it's better to have that pull back and have a nice strong foundation. But what is going to happen? This is what I'm waiting to see. Honestly, I probably can wait to see it, but I can't wait to see it. Is when those other countries that are holding their gold at the Bank of England demand delivery. Mm-hmm. That is going to be, you think you just saw fireworks in silver? That is going to be huge fireworks, because we've already seen here in the U.S. when there was all this talk about auditing Fort Knox, and then it went dead silent. Why? Why did it go dead silent? Guess we're going to find out at some point.
Yeah, definitely. So this paper market for gold and silver, obviously gold and silver being real money, and you have these futures contracts and everything. Does this demand for physical delivery, at some point, does that break the paper market? Just kind of wondering about that.
That is exactly right. And so that's what was just happening with the backwardation. That was becoming apparent. And so if that had continued, are they ready for that market to break now? I guess not. But at some point, will they be? Probably not. I don't think they're really going to be ever fully ready for those fireworks. But that's exactly it. It's stand and deliver. And, in our last conversation, I think we even talked about this, where the U.S., like I said, it's primarily contracts, and it's just about trading. It is not about typically taking delivery, and yet there was some big kahunas that were standing for delivery at a high enough level on the gold, but also on the silver, to make the shipment in various ways, whether it's boats or even airplanes now, right, makes it more viable, because obviously silver's spot price is substantially lower than gold's spot price. But yeah, that's exactly what's happening. The physical market will at some point fully break the back of the paper market. And unfortunately, I think that's going to happen in ever so many areas. But I've been talking about the fact that I believe we are now in the melt-up phase of these markets. And you're watching stocks make higher and higher highs, right? Shoot, going to the moon. NVIDIA, now the first $5 trillion company. Mm-hmm. Well, people will look at that and go, wow, look at how great is that? Look at how much NVIDIA is worth. When in reality, when we are actually seeing those things, it's an indication of how much less the currency is worth. It's not how much more. Same thing with the spot markets flying. That's not, this is a $20 gold piece. It's the same $20 gold piece, and yet can you buy this for $20? No. That's an indication not that gold has gone up, but that the currencies have gone down in value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So just thinking about the the current demand for delivery of the physical metal, obviously in the 1980s, you had the Hunt brothers, and there was a coordinated effort to shut them down. Now, and now it's like there's no who can shut it down. I mean, you have central banks, accumulating. So there's no one entity or one nation or multitude of nations that could stop that or shut that off. Now you have a lot of institutional
delivery.
Yeah, physical delivery.
Sorry, you mean the physical delivery?
Yeah, exactly. And so I was just kind of thinking about that, like the coordinated effort of the government to shut down the Hunt brothers, like that's not going to happen in this particular case, because now you have other nations and central banks that are demanding the gold, and so I was kind of thinking about that.
You're right. And, when we had a repatriation rush, and that repatriation rush, I think it was around when India demonetized about 85% of its currency. And so there were a number like Germany, et cetera, that were asking for their gold back. And the Bank of England or whoever it was that was holding their gold said, okay, we'll give it to you, but you have to wait 10 years or 7 years or whatever the number was. And so, first of all, I don't think that everybody is necessarily operating as an island. And keep in mind that what we saw after 2008 was a coordinated central bank effort. And that lasted until 2015 with the Swiss surprise. And then central banks realized, well, they can't necessarily count on other central banks, but they still come together through the IMF. I mean, almost everybody's a member of the IMF, so they meet regularly. So I'm not sure that they couldn't just shut it down, because they could do a global confiscation, which is why I personally, because I was born in 1954, and at that time it was illegal to hold more than 5 ounces of gold any other way than the pre-1933 collectible coins. So much as people might want to poo-poo them, the reality is this is in a different category. So if they did a global confiscation, because this is going to be a global effort, there's not one doubt about it in my mind. This has to be a global effort. And I would say that's true on another level for growing a global community. But I think you need to look at those that are in power, those that are in that 1%, really what kind of gold are they holding for themselves? Now, central banks will just have monetary gold, but that's okay. What do the individuals that would write the laws, what are they holding? And you can see what that is if you go to the PCGS 3000 ultra rarities. And these are coins that are, like this, slabbed like this, that might be in the $18 million, $20 million range for 1 ounce of gold. That creates a separate category. That's the category. Now, I don't spend $8 million on a coin, not even marginally to that level. I mean, not even marginally.
I was thinking whoa.
Yeah, no. And this is definitely not, this is probably this is a 62. Oh, this is actually a good coin, but I can't go by this. So this would be a more rare coin, because this is 1874. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you can get them for not really a whole lot of premium above spot based on its rarity. So I personally, having lived through that and having an antique dealer uncle that was sitting on at least 3,000 ounces of pre-1933 raw coins like this, which was the only legal way that he could hold the gold and, I don't know, use it in the normal marketplace, and I'm executing a strategy. So I intend to use not all my gold, because everybody always needs to have a foundation in sound money, but I have gold that I will be using to pay off debts, to convert into income producing assets, as well as the new system when we get to the other side of this mess.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful to understand. So there is opportunity for, I mean, obviously if the dollar falls against gold significantly, and let's say the price of gold measured in dollars just goes bananas or whatever, you could take some of those profits and recycle them into some other income producing assets, like real assets, like real estate. And I've heard some folks do that.
Right. Or pay off a fixed rate mortgage. I mean, what is the strategy of the governments? I mean, there's a few reasons, but in doing this, it's to repay that debt with dollars in this country that have less and less value. Well, why can't you do that? So it isn't should that happen. That would be historically accurate that when the public, because that's the last bit of confidence that's left, when the public loses confidence in this garbage, then in order to regain that public confidence, now we're in hyperinflation when that happens because they don't trust this stuff, right? So when that happens, they do that overnight reset, this junk, fiat money, government debt-based money that has no value, against gold. And then gold begins to express or move toward its fundamental value. So when that happens, like in Venezuela, that overnight reset, see, they must suppress the price of gold because a rising gold price is an indication of a failing currency and a looming crisis. So it kind of, I don't do this very well, but I'll do it anyway. It's kind of like holding your hand on a spring and you push down, down, down. When you release your hand, it shoots in a direction. So when they do that overnight reset, that's exactly what happens in terms of the currency anywhere in the world, dollars, euro, yen, doesn't matter. It shoots towards its true fundamental value, not Wall Street's manipulated, suppressive spot market. And that number is somewhere in the vicinity of $40,000. And it's just based on all the debt, not even all the derivatives, but all the debt that created this, because this is sound money. This is fiat money. They're both money, but they're like the flip side of the coin. Mm-hmm. So it's not a random number that I pull out of the air. It's how much debt is there, and I'm not even talking about all the derivatives, so it would be a very, very, very conservative number. You take all the debt that's been created, and according to the IFF, that would, last time I checked, it was $313 trillion, and you divide it by all the gold that exists in the world. So all the gold that they've pulled out of the ground, and include all the gold that's yet left in the ground to be pulled out, conservative, and that gets us somewhere in the vicinity between $33,000 and $40,000 the last time I looked. So with a spot at $4,000, it's a bargain. And that overnight reset, you know, if anybody wants to test this at all, because I don't think you should ever take anybody's word for anything, I think you should do your own due diligence, go to any currency converter. I happen to use xe.com and put in there on the left-hand side, put in gold, XAU, and on the other side, pick a currency, any currency, pick the Venezuelan bolivar, you know, pick some currency like that, but you can pick any currency. But there, you will be able to see what that overnight reset looks like. And it looks exactly the same. But you also need to understand, so that's the time to pay off your fixed rate debt, like a mortgage or a car loan or any debt that's fixed rate. But on the flip side of that, I can't tell you how many overnight resets they're going to do. I can tell you that globally on average, it's happened 4,800, well, more than 4,800 times historically. We will get 3, if history repeats itself, the average does anyway, we'll get 3 of those overnight resets. So there are opportunities that will present as they burn off this unpayable debt, because right now, all of those assets that have been inflated by all of the money printing, so yeah, your income producing real estate, your stock markets, your bond markets, your crypto markets, all of that stuff, that intangible stuff that were targeted for inflation, because people see it going up and they get fear of missing out. Well, what's overvalued now, that's going to flip-flop. I can't tell you who's going to survive it, because we got zombie governments, zombie central banks, zombie corporations, and zombie consumers. So who's going to survive this mess is anybody's guess at this point. However, those that do survive will be a whole lot cheaper. So now you've got gold somewhere on its way to fundamental value, and the ability to now convert some of that gold into those other then undervalued assets. So what that really takes me to, Darrell, is the importance of everybody understanding the true fundamental value of every asset or every instrument, because that is the only way that you as an individual can really know, is this undervalued? Is it fairly valued? Is it overvalued? Therefore, do I want to buy it? Do I want to hold it? Do I want to liquidate it? You know, if you're counting on Wall Street, which shocks me like crazy that anybody believes that they're getting any true valuations from Wall Street, but okay. You know, if you're counting on Wall Street, to tell you the truth, there is this bridge in Brooklyn. I don't really own it, but I could sell it to you anyway. I mean, I wouldn't do that because I have more integrity than that. But, you know, the point is that we cannot be dependent upon others to give us truth. We have to have those tools to hold people accountable and to know what the truth really is. Because how many times can you be lied to when you do not know the truth? And then who are you going to blame? Right? So I think it's critical.
We've just made a discovery, the theory discovery on the Poplar property. It's really captured the attention of a lot of people, including a number of majors. There's already a big resource base there at Poplar. We're drilling that out as we speak. So expect good, strong news flow from us over the next little while. You want to be invested before we start to drill our Copperview project. That anomaly we have there is outstanding. So I think that's a chance of seeing a major re-rate. You can find more about Vizsla Copper at vizslacopper.com.
Just to pull on a couple threads, you mentioned when they reset, they hit the reset button. Are you referring to gold revaluation in that context? Okay, because I was looking at a recent comment that Treasury Secretary Bessent said, and he mentioned gold price rising has helped us substantially, and I was kind of thinking, like, what does he mean there? We haven't revalued, or is he hinting at something that's coming or whatnot? Obviously, the national debt that's on the books just hit 38 trillion and such. And so, you know, there's been a lot of talk about this revaluation, this reset. And so, you know, it had piqued my interest for sure.
Oh, well, absolutely. But you do know that every single country has a gold revaluation account. Every single country does. Why? I mean, if gold is such an old, irrelevant relic, why are global central banks accumulating it at the fastest pace ever? And by the way, if you think that we only have 38 trillion in debt, that's all that they report. But they don't report their true gold holdings either. So yes, ultimately, that's how governments 100% of the time deal with non-payable debt. And everybody's in the same boat. So that's also why I think that when this happens, it is more than likely to be a globally coordinated effort. And unless you get into position before that happens, you're toast. You're toast. You're not going to be able to do it after the fact, that's for sure. And you're not going to be able to do it should they come together and say, oh, it's everybody's patriotic duty because we're in such trouble to turn in their gold. They'll entice you to do it. They'll say, let's say spot's at $6,000 when they make that announcement. But don't worry, we're going to take care of you and we'll pay you $10,000. So most people, again, I don't know why they believe this, but they would go, well, wow, it's only worth $6,000, but they're willing to pay me 10. Okay, I'll turn it in, right? Look at how much gold comes out of the closets when the spot price rises, and then people go to these cash for gold places, which don't ever do that, but people do because they don't know any better, and they're totally getting ripped off, and they're totally way too soon.
Yeah, for sure. So just thinking about, the audience that's watching. So I have a few friends of mine who they've been seeing the dollar fall against gold, seeing that the gold price has been elevated, and so they've reached out to me, and they haven't started. Some of them, have a little bit of money to put away, some of them lesser degree. And so so one of my friends, I just told her, like, hey, just start off buying a gram, and I heard you mentioned gold backs earlier. And so it's like there should be no barrier to entry, for folks that may just want to get ahead, even at the current prices in gold. Like, you can still buy fractional pieces and such. In proportion to how much you're able to afford at this time. And so could you speak to that part of the audience that may, look at the ounce of gold spot price, oh, it's went up and, I can't afford it. But there's still opportunity for them to get in.
There 100% there is, because people need to understand that gold and silver in any form at all is monetary at its base. And it does not matter what the condition is. It can be bent, broken, destroyed. It doesn't matter. It's still monetary at its base. And so, yes, you can get in for very little money. Let's see, here's my gold back. Now you do have to understand the markups in there, but there are a place. I would not build my whole portfolio on this, but for the initial push into the portfolio, you're going to have some cash. Yep, it's going away. It is. You're going to have some cash. You're going to have maybe even some digital gold like in Glint or Kinesis or something like that. And I use those two because you can redeem that gold. Must be redeemable. In other words, you must be able to take physical possession. And there's also like a variety of sizes. Like, this is a $1 gold coin. It's a 20th of an ounce, and you can barely see it. It's so teeny weeny, right? So there's all different sizes, and there's all different ways that anybody and everybody can position into gold. And when you see the price and you understand that that is just a trading market and that things are shifting, so that's a contract market, and there is a structural shift happening in the physical markets, you can't afford not to participate. And the other thing that I really want to put out there, because it's so critically important, I hope that it's obvious to everybody that we are transitioning into a new system. And these transitions are not easy for most people. They are not easy at all. So, and especially if you are within a tight budget, but this would be true for anybody. This is really time to build a local community, because food, and that should be obvious to everybody too, food becomes the single biggest issue for people. So, maybe you don't have the ability to grow food. You don't know how to do it or whatever. But guess what? You can go to a farmer's market. You can go to a community garden. You can volunteer your time. Here, tell me what to do and I'll do it. You will learn a skill and you will create a relationship inside of a community. And this, to me, is the single most important thing for everybody to do, because you need to have the ability to be as independent and self-sufficient and do it within community, because I've been working on this since, well, really 2002 with the gold and the silver, but 2008, I 100% knew that the system had died. And so where I was getting ready to retire and I lived in a little 2-bedroom condo that I could just lock the door and off I went, I then bought this property in the center of Phoenix. Hopefully you'll be down and we can do this live. You'll have an opportunity to see what I'm talking about. And I've been working on this hard since then. And even though I feel more ready than most anybody I know, I'm not ready yet. And so we need to create surety in food, water, energy, security, barterability, which for me is primarily silver, but any talent you have, anything physical that you have is barterable. Wealth preservation, building that community because there is strength in numbers, and having a decent shelter over your head. These are all the things we need to lead a reasonable lifestyle. And so I honestly don't think that there's quite enough time for people to do it on their own like I've been able to do it. And I didn't really do it on my own. What I really was able to do was build a community around me that had expertise and has expertise in all these different areas. But I would say that that's probably the most critically important thing for people to do is get to know your neighbors. There's power in numbers. And that's just on a local basis. On a global basis, we better get sound money back in the system again, and it better be redeemable. In other words, if I don't like what I see my government or my central bank doing, presuming there's a central bank, then I can pull this gold out of the system and force fiscal responsibility. This, my friend, is how the public takes its power back. And we have to do that. If we don't, now you're in a full surveillance system and they are the ones that dictate everything. And if you don't have that community around you and they say jump and you are fully dependent upon their system, what freedoms, what choices do you have?
Yeah.
None. That's not okay with me. I'm not worried about me. I'm not even worried about my family because I know what I've done to put them in the best possible position. But guess what? This isn't just about me or my family. It's about you and your family and everybody that's watching. It's about you and your family. So I challenge everybody to look in the mirror and say, if not me, who? And if not now, when? And come together and just have a peaceful revolution. Mm-hmm. All you have to do is convert your garbage fiat that you know is losing value constantly into sound money that they cannot inflate away. That is, according to the Bank for International Settlements, the only financial product that runs zero counterparty risk. Everything else is a contract, and that means everything else is counterparty risk. Mm-hmm. And you didn't write that contract, and I'm pretty sure you don't understand the contract because you didn't read it, or you didn't have a lawyer to read it, or gosh, with this stuff, the physical representation of the digital surveillance currencies, right? I mean, are you a specific kind of engineer that could go in and read this code? Because I'm not. Mm-hmm. Well, gosh, if I can't, what do you think the possibility of me being taken advantage of is?
Yeah.
High. Pretty high.
Yeah.
That's how important it is. And by the way, why in the world would they have to make this garbage that does not have a physical body look exactly like a 1 ounce gold coin?
Yeah.
Perception management.
That's always confused me when I see those coins. So just, I mean, that's a very important points that you mentioned there, especially the importance of community. Recently at our airport here where I live, they had an event, and the event was to give out food boxes to federal workers, and they had an issue where federal workers were coming through the line grabbing boxes, and there was a lot of them, and then you had other workers that weren't federal that needed to get boxes of food too, and so I think they had to turn some people away because they were going to run out like really fast. And that's pretty alarming and pretty sad and scary. Like, and so it really highlights the importance of having community and those around you that can support you in those times of need.
Yeah, I was listening to an interview just recently from the CEO from what is that website? GoFundMe. Yeah, the GoFundMe CEO.
Yeah.
He said that the fastest growing area in his business were people that were using GoFundMe for basic necessities, food, rent, utilities, things like that. The fastest growing area.
Wow.
And also another very rapidly growing area are people using those 4 easy payments to buy their food every week for their children. And how long can they do that? Because every week they tack on another 4 easy payments. I mean, this is a huge indication that the public in general is in deep doo-doo. But don't worry about it because we're still in a K shape, right? So those at the top are doing just dandy. Mm-hmm. Well, I think, we have an obligation as humans on this planet to not be an island, to do what we can to help people.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, Lynette, appreciate you for coming on to the show and sharing that important message with the audience today. Where can people connect with you? I know you do Q&As on your channel and such, and then you also have your own services that you offer to folks. And so where can people access that?
Well, we're very, very prolific on YouTube and Twitter at the Lynette Zang, Instagram and Facebook at Lynette Zang, and of course the website LynetteZang.com. And that's where we execute our sound money strategy, and we help people with the physical gold and the physical silver. And we start, the whole strategy is built in layers, and it starts with your gold. With your goals, not with your gold, with your goals. And so that it's tweaked and customized for you. And we're always happy to be of service because every single person, and I can say this from the bottom of my heart and in absolute truth, every single person at Zang Enterprises wants to make a positive difference for a lot of people. So we are all here to be of service.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I appreciate the work you're doing for the people. You all be sure to go check out LynetteZang.com and the YouTube channel. Would also appreciate your subscription to our YouTube channel as we continue to put out this content. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you, Lynette, for your time.